So welcome to everybody. My name is Dr. Marla Coonan. I'm the Executive for Strategy and Stakeholder Management here at the Vinci Institute. And I think Curiosita is always one of my favorite events that we do. And I just want to spend a moment just saying that the purpose of Curiosita has always been, and those that have joined, I see like Brian and Dr. Lloyd, who have been part of the community for a long, Janet, I see you as well, would know that the purpose of it is really to engage. And so moving it online was something of a challenge because we really wanted to make sure that we didn't lose the essence of what it is. And we've been debating quite a lot at the moment that I hope you guys will see coming out in some of our stuff about this concept of values and the fact that at Da Vinci, we would not want to ever impart or impose values on anybody because, as you know, we believe come very much from an interpretivist paradigm in the sense that every individual experiences things differently. But what we do really want to espouse is around this fact that there are things that we value as an institute, and we hope those that join, those that are alumnus and those that are students really do value and can embrace the things that we would hope that we as an institute show that we value. And one of them, and one of the critical ones, is definitely an insatiable curiosity. And I think that's why Curiosita remains so important, because it really is about seeking, a truth for ourselves, but also about being curious around things. So today, we always start off Curiosita by having a little bit of a debate or a little bit of a discussion, and it really is an open forum for you to, as you wish, to sort of add things as they come up and to discuss them. So we like to pose something that's quite topical. And I think that Dr. Fulyun, I saw that you just joined, and I'm really glad you did, because it was something that I saw on your own Facebook that made me inspired to actually start the debate today. So we'll debate for a few moments, and then after that, we've really got two incredible speakers. We've got an amazing speaker in Chimani who's going to discuss with us entrepreneurship among township entrepreneurs, which I think in our current times is so critical, but also something really challenging, so something really engaging. And then we've got Mrs. Regan Berry, who's joining us to discuss her doctoral studies, which is about constructing a framework of intervention to facilitate holistic transformation of South African township primary schools. And I think given where we are currently in the country and what is happening, I really hope that our debate today is a little bit different to how we normally do it, where we pose a topic and ask people for opinion. Today, I'm making you all the president for the day. This is not a political debate at all, and it's nothing to do with politics, but rather a quote I saw on Dr. Rico Fulyun's had posted, which says, "This, my dear, is the greatest challenge of being alive, to witness the injustice of this world and not allow it to consume our light." And I hope you don't mind that I used that, Dr. Fulyun, with respect, because the discussion I wanted to have today was, if you were made the president of a country for the day, in terms of what we've experienced, we've seen in South Africa mass looting. Yes, there has been aspect of the looting which has been connected to crime, etc., and some inferences to politics, but really there's also a massive cry because of people losing jobs, hunger, those type of aspects, and we've got a real humanitarian crisis. And then if we look at it, I will share Dr. Deploy-Cilliers, the quote Dr. Deploy-Cilliers asked me to share. The other crisis that we have is, I don't know if you've seen this week, but there were discussions this week where it was in terms of people that were receiving rice from the government. Prof. Klopper, just remind me, I suddenly was going to say in Uganda, but it's not Uganda where I saw it. As far as I know, it was in Ghana.
Ghana, yeah, it's Ghana.
Where rice was handed out from politicians because people were complaining about being hungry, and the youth were actually throwing it back into the bakkies that were delivering it because they were saying, we don't want the rice. We want jobs. We want to be useful. We want to, be in society. So the question I'd like to pose today is, as leaders, given where we're sitting in our own country, with looting, with hunger, with jobs, etc., if you were given the role of the president for the day, dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, dealing with the looting, what type of leadership practices, what type of strategies do you think we should be putting in place if we really want to see a shift from a socioeconomic perspective? So I suppose a little bit of a challenge, and I certainly don't have the answer to it. I just pose the questions. And then again, taking back that quote that I said earlier about that Dr. Fuyun posted, which is to witness the injustice of the world and not allow it to consume our life. So to be able to continue to be positive leaders in the space.
All right, let me make some comments. I mean, clearly, everybody's saying that they want jobs. But if I can just draw on my core discipline of economics, the only way to get jobs is through innovation. And therefore, any restriction on innovation should be lifted. The way in which the lifted innovation, the way in which the opportunity can be taken up is through firms. And there's an important economic theory, which we're all familiar with, the Adam Smith theory of the specialization of labor, and that a firm of 5 people compared to a firm of 50 people, the productivity per person in a firm of 50 people is much greater because of the productivity of labor and the specialization of labor which flows from that. But there's an important new theory which is coming about, which is that in addition to there's not just the specialization of labor, but we need the specialization of firms. And that what really causes an economy to grow is many firms acting independently and achieving the same benefits as the specialization of labor that occurred with Adam Smith's theory. So this would be one of the reasons for why, if Eskom, for example, was to be broken up into 3 firms, its productivity would improve immensely. So this is what I would say that the president needs to do, is to lift the restrictions on improving productivity through enabling innovation.
Well, Brian for president then, and Dr. Lloyd is also in the running for president. And that Dr. Lloyd's commented that I would focus on school children who are left behind. I'd find them, get them back into schools. I'd make sure that there was proper school transport, free schooling, free first post-school qualifications, and funded post-school work integrated learning. I think, Dr. Lloyd, this is critical. I wish you could unmute yourself, because I think one of the biggest aspects for me, both on Brian's comments and Shirley's, is around the fact that innovation really is critical. And we've been discussing quite a lot how people see innovation as something that is new or something that is developed as a product, etc. And innovation does not have to be, discovering something. It can certainly be new processes, different ways of doing things, etc. And I think if more people saw innovation in that light and had innovative things in terms of what they were doing, that would also add to it. Dr. Lloyd's also commented that we have a tragedy in our midst, that this could be the next lost generation, and we really have to deal with it. So she would refocus the spend, on what we spend our money on in the short term. And I think these are really critical points as well.
I would love to, I wish I could wave a magic wand. I really do believe there is a lot of money all over the place. And the money, we need to find where all the different pots of money are. I would immediately also refocus the entire skills levy, how it is spent in the short term. There's literally billions of rands that goes into the levy, goes into the National Skills Fund. And when you look at the National Skills Plan, for example, it's again diluted all over the place. I think we have short-term immediate crisis that we have to focus on. We look at the unemployed youth, the so-called NEET youth. We look at this current the children. I think the statistics are so frightening of children who have not returned to school. And this just aggravates what happens in the socioeconomic space. We need to get them back into classrooms, back into schooling in whichever way. And we also need to focus, I believe, very, very much on what I call inclusive technology and the creation of digital little hubs, eco hubs, where you could have universities, colleges, community colleges becoming the hub where your community can go and learn, where we have partnerships with the big telecoms companies, where in fact those partnerships create those digital hubs where people can get to very easily. And then finally, making sure that every child has a transport to get to school, and something, food in the tummy, and something warm to wear. So I think it's really a refocusing on education, on the huge tragedies we've had, and on dealing with how we get these youngsters back to school, and then getting companies. And maybe I'm going to say something that's going to tramp on toes. I believe a lot of companies might be slightly selfish, is a strong word, by not wanting to take youngsters in work integrated learning with a real commitment that they are actually going to employ those youngsters when that work integrated learning period is finished. So it's all around skills development, learning, getting kids back into the classroom. So that's my take. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Lloyd. Much appreciated. Prof. Klopper?
Thank you, Marla. To build onto that, without repeating, I think, as you say, I don't want to go into, if I were president, what went wrong in the past. I think it's a challenge to get out of that. But looking into the future, I believe in increasing productivity through structural reform, and over and above to the education that Dr. Lloyd just did, that will obviously allow private sector and business to really start making a contribution to the economy, which at the moment, if you look at the population growth rate, is higher than our economic growth rate. It's a problem. So we're steering up in a direction. If we can turn that around, and there's activities, and I believe the will is there and the means are there, and I think, Shirley, you're correct in how we should feed that system, then immediately there will be activity that will attract international investors, and that thing will become positive. So I think it, for me, sits in structural reform and many things to that. And innovation, I agree with Brian, it's key to that.
I read recently that only 150,000 children have been orphaned in the last year with the pandemic. And we've got 10% of child-headed households, and that impacts both the school attendance and the support and education available to those families. So if we could create an in-home caregiver structure and additional funding for people who can assist those child-headed households, so particularly the older sibling can also go back to school and find different ways of being educated. I don't think orphanages is the best answer from the research that's on the table. And Regan, I know you know lots more about this than I do. But I think that putting in support structures and more social work and community works, we've seen it work with the HIV/AIDS stuff. I think it'll create both employment and community centeredness. I'd also like to suggest that while I'm not a big fan of specialization necessarily leading to increased performance, I do think infrastructure and making it easier to hire people and reducing some of the wage extensions things would make it easier for small businesses, particularly to hire people, even for short-term periods. And then I think I want to say that we do not have enough schools. And if you look at the mess of the number of people who need to try and bid for places in high schools, we need to double the number of high schools we've got and increase the primary schools. And that even that construction as a public works program would create enormous employment. I also want to say the people who are doing a good job and the people who we've come to see are as critical to our economy, the nurses, the healthcare workers, the teachers, the police. I don't think any of us would argue that those people don't need a pay increase. Marla, you and I have talked many times about what police people get paid. And I think the best way to reduce corruption is to make sure there's a good salary on the table and consequences of losing it if you don't work well. And so those sorts of things come into it. And then also to build on Shirley's contribution, I think along every major highway and in all the metropolitans, we need to increase Wi-Fi access, network and internet security so that the stability is there for people to access internet and data at a low cost level. And all of those will have knock-on effects. And I'm just going to say there's a cascading effect from several things. We know that infrastructure projects create downstream jobs. We've had successes in things like the Working for Water project. Let's do it again. Why did that project stop? There's a lot of questions there. So let's take the things we know that have worked previously and take what we know. We've got the skills in this country. We've got some awesome people. Let's let them free and find ways for them to move forward.
Thank you very much, everyone, for their contributions. Dr. Lloyd, I'm not sure if it's an old hand, a new hand, or as Dr. Ivor Blumenthal, one of our alumnus and council members, says, an arthritic hand. So I see, Dr. Lloyd, it was an old hand. So thank you to everyone who contributed. I think these are great topics and great ideas. And as you know, this is just sort of a little taster we do in the beginning. I would love it if any of you, Dr. Lloyd, some of your comments, etc., Brian, contribute blogs to the blog space at Da Vinci. If you forward those on to me, I would love to post some of your blogs and thoughts around this as well. And thank you very much. So if I could ask the guests who are also here to give us some emojis for our presidential candidates. I'm giving much love to you because I think, and hand claps, because I do think those were really some incredible points for all our presidentials. So I see Belinda Goddard's also giving some love. But now we get into the real meat of today, where we first of all start with one of our doctoral students. And what I always love about Da Vinci's doctoral students is the fact that each and every one of them are also experts in their own field and in their own rights as well. And so they come with a wealth of transdisciplinary knowledge that they bring to their studies. So today we have Regan Berry, who's going to be presenting around her doctoral studies that she's embarked on. And I said at the beginning, it's constructing a framework of intervention to facilitate holistic transformation of South African township primary schools. Dr. Lloyd, certainly something, and Dr. Good, after your own hearts. And I think after many of ours, because when I started today and I spoke about the things that we value at Da Vinci, one of them is connected to co-creation. And as Da Vincians, we expect that all of us, both staff, students, and alumnus, and anyone within the community and lecturers and faculty are expected to be accountable for their actions and conduct in the community and have a responsibility to contribute towards a community of practice where people grow and develop through learning from one another. And Regan, I could not think of somebody more fitting to do this than you. And so, as you know, at Da Vinci, we do purple cows. So I will definitely add my "you move me to remarkability" cow, because Regan is actually a social worker. She holds a master's in social science. And I think it's quite incredible to see that as a business and life coach and a registered social worker that's in private practice with over 18 years of experience in therapeutic work, you have an in-depth understanding of something very critical to us, which is the management of people, communication, relationships, and systems. And I think if we handle that in a systemic way, it is something really critical. But what really fascinates me about you is that you've been involved in a primary school in Alexandra Township on a pro bono basis since 2012, where you've not only contributed to the community, but you've coached the principal, and it has led to several other interventions leading to the transformation of the school from an underperforming school to one that's now recognized as a leading example in the Gauteng province. I think we've all seen how badly hit Alexandra has been during the looting and the political unrest that we've had. And the fact that you're going to use grounded theory to construct a framework of transformation for township primary schools is something I look forward to following your journey. I just want to remind the audience that our students that present are usually just in the beginning phases of their study, and so they value those of you that have either more experience or different types of experience to please contribute. So feel free to raise your hands and to ask questions, etc., during Regan's presentation, but we will also leave time afterwards that you'd be able to pose any questions or provide her with any advice. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Marla. Afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to perhaps give you a bit of context. Perhaps I'm coming into the process to present here at Curiosita slightly later than some people, because I'm actually in my third year of my PhD studies, and I've already, obviously my proposal was accepted and I've already got ethics approval from Da Vinci, and then also from the Gauteng Department of Education, because the school that I'm basing my research on falls under the Gauteng Department of Education, and I've actually started my data collection. So I'll just do my presentation and then engage the audience and see what you have to say. And I'd love to hear insights from the audience. I know there's so many people here with PhDs and with lots of research experience, so I'd really value any insights you have, any nuggets that you can share with me on your research journeys that you've gained along the way. Just to give you a little bit of background to this study, I think it'll just help sort of for the context. And I'm going to take you back to 2011. At the end of 2011, I was sitting in an auditorium of a private girls' school in Johannesburg. My daughter it was her prize giving, and it's a real world-class sort of music auditorium, and really plush. And we were sitting listening to the principal give her speech before the prize giving started. And in that speech, she gave a call out to the audience asking, is there anyone here who would like to get involved in a school in Alexandra Township? The private girls' school was involved in a little government school down the road from them that catered and looked after a lot of children from Alex. And the headmaster or the principal of that primary school had been promoted to lead up the school in Alex, this primary school in Alex. And she said, if anyone's interested, please come forward and let me know. And driving home that day after the prize giving, I turned to my husband and said, I think that call was meant for us. I think I'd like to do something. And he said he'd had exactly the same thought sitting there in that prize giving. And then we sort of thought and we spoke about it some more. And the next year in January 2012, we went to go see her just to hear about what she had in mind and what the possibilities were. And she set up a meeting with myself and the principal. And he came to the school. And then meeting him, I said to him, I can offer you coaching skills and I can offer my time to coach you. And he jumped at the opportunity. And then I went through and sort of met him at the school, and he explained to me and gave me context of the school. And then this remarkable relationship started. And I spent the whole of sort of 2012 really trying to understand the context of the school, coaching the headmaster, and then began to be involved in various other spaces. I sort of helped him with the school governing body, and we did sort of training with the school governing body. Maybe just to sort of give an insight, when the headmaster took over at the end of 2011, the school was incredibly dysfunctional. There was financial mismanagement, there was very poor attendance of the learners and the teachers, really poor productivity. There was an annual national assessment that took place, and the learners were achieving between 30 and 40% for English and maths. And it was sort of, the school was in disarray, and there were no school policies in place. And I journeyed with the headmaster, and a most remarkable man. I think sort of nothing, this research wouldn't have taken place if it wasn't for this remarkable man who has an incredible vision for Alex. His vision is that the school will be the lighthouse in Alex. And he's got this incredible ability to have this beautiful big vision, but also have attention to detail. And he's an incredible man that's open to learning. And so we began this journey together. And over sort of the 10 years that I've been involved at the school, there's been the most remarkable transformation that's taken place. And I didn't enter this sort of journey and this relationship with this headmaster or the school thinking of research at all. It was the furthest thing from my mind. But as time went on and I began to see the remarkable changes that took place and the lessons that we were learning together and the things that we were seeing, the interventions that we were seeing being put in place and the results from those interventions, I realized that there was a beautiful story here that needed to be told, and that there was huge value in learning that could be documented and then sort of used to make a difference in other township schools. And so I then began to sort of explore how to do research, explore how I was going to take and document that journey. And then I decided I was going to do a PhD. And that sort of journey eventually led me to Da Vinci, and thanks to Belinda Goddard, she's on this call. She was a big sort of advertisement for me for Da Vinci and how it was led to Da Vinci. And I loved sort of the way that Da Vinci is a Mode 2 university and is open to really different learning. And led me to Dr. Regan Berry, who is my supervisor. So it's lovely to see you here and have you here with us as well, Dr. Berry. And so, yes, then I moved on. So that just gives you a bit of context in terms of how I came to this study. My actual study, to try and understand my actual study, is if we look at my ontology, which is around my belief around the nature of reality and humanity, I've adopted a constructivist ontological approach, believing that reality is socially constructed by people in their interactions. And my epistemology, which is around my view of the nature of knowledge and how knowledge is produced, is interpretivist. So that sort of gives you a little bit understanding of my research paradigms. And then in terms of my theoretical frameworks, I'm looking at I've used three theories to understand and the study, and sort of lenses to look at the study and this work. And there's a real synergy between them. They all are systems thinking and around systems thinking, but they each come at systems from a slightly different stance. The first one being Bronfenbrenner's biological ecosystems theory. And he looks at how systems are affected, and people or schools in particular are affected by a microsystem, a mesosystem, an exosystem, a microsystem, and a chronosystem. And then I'm also using system psychodynamic theory. And that theory draws from psychoanalytic theory, from group dynamics or group relations theory and systems thinking. That's sort of where system psychodynamic theory originates from. And then I'm also looking at the systems theory, human niche and spiral dynamics theory, because I think it brings a very different slant to systems thinking that would be very valuable in looking at a township setting, which is the context of the focus of my study. And I think all of those my paradigm and my thinking has obviously led me to qualitative research. And the research method that I've chosen, that sort of Dr. Marla said, is grounded theory. And particularly, I've chosen constructivist grounded theory, Sharma's constructivist grounded theory, which is all about offering an analytic interpretation of participants' worlds, how they process and construct these worlds, and the relationships between human agency and social structure. So you can see it was actually, you tied it beautifully, Marla, with Rika's quote, and then this topic that we sort of then discussed, which is all around systems and structures and people and the dire need we have in this country. And I think part of the data collection that the data collection methods that I'm going to use are a case study to try and understand and bring across the context of township primary schools, and then in-depth interviews to try and gather information from participants and school community members about how they understand the journey of the last 10 years. Obviously, it will be open because maybe some people don't think there's been transformation. So I'll be interested in their views and their construction of reality. And then people that do believe that there's been transformation to understand how they understand that transformation and what do they see as contributing towards that transformation, and what do they see as being obstacles to transformation. I will be also using focus groups. And I'll be using listening posts, which is a different type of data collection methodology. And I'm also going to be using autoethnography as one of my data collection methods. I think I'm really fascinated and interested to learn what participants in the community have to say. And then I also know that I have learned so much in this journey of walking with the school. And I think that's what I want to bring across as well. So as one aspect of data collected will be my journey and my insights and my story in this journey with the school. And all of this data will be gathered, and then the data analysis will be following Sharma's, sort of Kathy Sharma's coding. So I'll be using sort of initial coding, focus coding, and theoretical coding. And obviously, constructivist grounded theory, there's simultaneous data collection and analysis. So although I said I've only begun with my data collection, because of the reiterative simultaneous process that takes place in grounded theory, I've started my data analysis too, because there's a continuous sort of reiterative process between the data collection and the data analysis. Perhaps another sort of insight in terms of quality constructs that I'm going to use to assess the quality of the research. I'm adopting Kathy Sharma's identified sort of four criteria for looking at the qualitative constructivist grounded theory. And that's credibility, originality, resonance, and usefulness. So those were going to be the quality constructs of the data I'm collecting. And maybe I want to, that sort of gives you a broad, very brief overview of the research that I'm doing. And maybe I want to just go back to sort of your comment, Dr. Shirley Lloyd, in the beginning, when sort of we were having that discussion. And you spoke about that we've got a need to get children back into schools. And I agree with you. There's a deep, big need for that. But I think it goes deeper than that, and that we actually have to look at the school system and look at individual schools and then the broader school system that schools fall into. Because if we just get kids back into schools and they're dysfunctional schools, we're not doing them any service. And then it becomes a babysitting service and it's doing no good. So I really believe that we need to think carefully about reform and transforming those schools. And I think, Dr. Klopper, you'd mentioned structural reform. And I think that's exactly critical. And I think that's some of what the study is about, is really looking at structural reform in individual schools. And then obviously they fit into a broader system. And Dr. Heather Good, you'd also spoken about, obviously you'd spoken about the orphans and the child-headed households. And that is a big factor, obviously, at the school where I've done this intensive sort of long study on. It's a critical problem, really, really big issue, challenging issue. And you'd also spoken about the infrastructural development. And that is a big part and a big challenge. And it's been interesting to see the journey of the infrastructural development that's taken place.
I just wanted to double check with you the three concepts. It was credibility, originality, and did you say resourcefulness or usefulness? It just cut a little bit when you spoke.
Okay. Resonance and usefulness was the fourth one.
Okay, so it was so just for those of you that lost that moment, because I did, it was credibility, originality, and then you said usefulness.
And resonance.
Resonance. Okay, yeah, just checking. Thank you. So if anyone else has cut at the same time, I know Letta and mine cuts at the same time. Anyone else would like to ask some questions, comments, or anything to Regan?
I just wanted to congratulate Regan. Regan, you are amazing student, and it's an honor to be your supervisor. You are really, for a master's degree, we look at the being an independent student, but for a doctorate, we really look for that person that can critically think and reason. And you are weaving together an interesting interplay of different lenses and theories, and your methodological strategy and design are quite sophisticated. I am wondering in the fascination on this from a psychodynamic stance, and maybe if you can respond to that a little. And also arguing from my side that at least that will also help to make this study extremely specific or unique. Maybe just explore that a little.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Rika. So just to perhaps give a slight background on how I sort of entered in terms of that frame, while I was preparing for my research, so long before I'd even signed up, I was doing a lot of reading. And I came across an article by Dr. Pam Christie, who is a UCT lecturer. And she had written a story about the disorganization in our township schools. And in that, she made reference to an apathy that's found in some township schools. And she spoke about it being a defense that's built into the system of the school. And she refers to the work of Wilfred Bion, who did a lot of work on functional groups and dysfunctional groups, which he called basic assumption groups. And he said there are various ways that dysfunctional groups play out in different situations. And it was fascinating to me because during my work with the school, I had encountered apathy in various ways from various people. And I struggled to make sense of it. And this article, I had such a resonance with the article because it made sense of the experience that I'd had. And so I began to look and study, and then did some training around Wilfred Bion and training on the unconscious in groups. And I think part of what psychodynamic systems theory is to look at the group as a system and to look at the interplay of relationships in a group or in a school, and to look at what are the unconscious, to link the conscious behaviors and dynamics that you're seeing to unconscious behaviors and dynamics. And so that's what I want to do with that lens, because you can go into a school and have the most incredible intervention, but if you're not addressing the unconscious that's happening and the group dynamics that are taking place, you're wasting your time, and it can be a very unfruitful intervention. So that's what I'm looking at, sort of by bringing that lens into the study, so that ultimately the intervention will be holistic in the transformation, and it won't just be superficial or surface level change.
Thank you.
I would also like to ask something, but I will leave it to the audience at first. If anyone else would like to ask.
Marla, because Regan, we speak regularly about your study, so maybe without asking a question, if you can share with the audience some of your challenges you had around the listening post, because I think from a methodology perspective, that's very valuable to take note of that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Prof. So I used, maybe just to go back slightly before, when I'd set about doing this study, I hadn't planned to take COVID-19 into account in my study, as I suppose many other students in my position, and know that I now have to address COVID-19 and the impacts of COVID-19 on the school and in the broader context, Alex. And I had been part of a listening post, which I wonder if I presume there are people in this audience who don't know what a listening post is. Shall I just go a little bit into what that method is about? A listening post, it's a very structured 3-hour process where there is a topic and you have 14 or 15 people involved, and you've got some facilitators, and the group is given the topic, and in the first hour the group speaks about their preoccupations and their experiences relating to the topic. The second hour, people think about the themes that came up in that conversation in the first hour. And the third hour, people think together about an hypothesis related to that theme. Last year, in 2020, I was part of a virtual listening post that looked at the effects of COVID-19 on South Africa. And some of the thinking around a listening post, an assumption that is made is that the group will represent society, broader society, and some of the unconscious in society will come out in the conversation by the small group. But I was really struck in that listening post by the fact that there were a lot of middle-class professionals or upper class, like socioeconomic professionals involved in that space. And I realized that some of the conversation was not going to be the reality of people in Alex. And so I approached this a UNISA professor, and I asked her, has there been sort of work like this done in the townships in South Africa? And she wasn't aware of that. And so we began this collaborative journey to do this listening post in Alex. But it was quite a traumatic journey. I was really excited to collaborate with a professor from another institution, and then she pulled in some other people. But it was quite a traumatic journey, because through this process, I was actually excluded. And the system, the sort of dynamics going on between the facilitators meant it was, people that then excluded me from the process. But I was able to sort of work my way back in, and we gathered the most incredibly rich data from the community about the effects of COVID-19 on Alex. So in the end, it was an invaluable experience, but it was a bit of a traumatic journey to get to the results in the end.
Thanks, Regan. So I see Sachaba Motiloa, our Chair of Council, and also a Da Vinci student's got his hand up. But then I do see Dr. Lloyd's made some comments, and we've got a couple of comments for you. So I'll start with the comments and then over to Sachaba. So Dr. Lloyd said, what is emerging as a restrictive process is the CAPS curriculum approach. It's taken away a lot of the innovative and creative roles of teachers. So that's just something, a comment there. And then it says, Regan, will you be using grounded theory in its entirety, or only using the grounded theory data analysis approach?
What's the thinking behind that question? If you can just help me out a little.
Okay, while Dr. Lloyd is busy typing or hopefully unmuting, Mark has asked, would you easily be able to take your learning to other township schools? So even though in interpretivism, I'm just adding this in, transferability is not really something that we specifically look at because it's not about generalization, but definitely it's always good to be able to implement the framework or the theory, etc. elsewhere. So his question is, would you be able to do it in other township schools?
Mark, I really am hoping that we will be able to, because I think there were incredible principles that we learned through this journey, and I really believe that there will be. And I think part of what I'm hoping that comes out in the framework is taking into account the specifics of the situation. And I think we've learned that even in the training that's been offered, how if that is sort of tailor-made to the school, there's far more retention of that training. If there's relationship between the trainer and the people that are being trained, the teachers, there's far more retention. And I've sort of gotten inkling that some of that is going to come out through this whole process. And I think that will be built into the framework. So I'm really hoping, yes, that it would be, so maybe not easily, because I don't think transformation of a township primary school is going to be easy in any way or form. But yes, I'm hoping that we will be able to take it to other township primary schools. That's the goal.
Thanks. But if I could hand over to Sachaba.
Recent unrest have shown us that communities don't even care they can ban a school without even thinking about it. So when the interventions are happening in the school, the immediate environment does have an impact on how that school functions, and just was curious to know to what extent that has been factored in and how that is brought into the study, so that let's call it, when the school and the intervention is eventually implemented, that then the external forces, like I've indicated, where community sometimes doesn't care even about the school that is teaching children in the community. It was a
question.
Thanks.
Right, thank you so much, Sachaba. Yes, I think obviously it has a really big role to play, the community. And I think what's also been fascinating to observe is the incredible way that the principal of this primary school has interacted and built up relationships with the community. He's got the most incredible skill to be a strong leader in his own context, but to know that the survival and success of the school depends on external relationships with the community and broader partnerships that extend beyond just the immediate community. And I think that has been significant in keeping the school safe, which has been interesting to hear the principal's journey about keeping his school safe. And there were instances, there was one particular night where people tried to break into the school and they couldn't get sort of move the one gate, but they managed to break down a gate and a motor and another entrance to the school. And the headmaster, through relationships with the community, although he doesn't stay in the community, he was able to call on people in the community to rush to the school. And he was able to call on partnerships and relationships that he built out with police stations outside of Alex to send people to the school to help protect the school. So I think, Sachaba, absolutely, it's crucial. And I'm really believe that some of that will come out in the framework too, that it's not just transformation in the particular school, but relationships with the community, immediate community and broader community come out. And I think it also relates to Bronfman Brenner's sort of theme, that you've got this microsystem of the school, you've got the mesosystem, which is relationships of different components of the school, their relationships, and one of that is the sort of parents and the community, and then a macro system. It falls into the broader understanding of Alex as a context. And I think that's vital. To do transformation, you need to understand the dynamics of what's going on in that broader system too.
Thanks, Regan. Sachaba, I hope that answers your question. We've got about 2 minutes left. So Dr. Lloyd has put a comment in the chat, but she has been able to be unmuted. Sachaba is giving you a thumbs up. She has been able to be unmuted. So Dr. Lloyd, if we could just finish off Regan's stuff with you guiding her in this regard.
I'll tell you why I've asked that question, and I'm actually very fascinated by the whole issue of grounded theory and grounded theory data analysis. And I've picked up that a number of master's and doctoral students are differentiating between pure grounded theory, where they talk about pure grounded theory, where there is no literature review chapter per se. And the theory emerges through the grounded theory process, and that creates the whole new theory for which there would not generally be a lot of literature, as opposed to a grounded theory data analysis approach where there is a literature review. But the data that emerges from their study, and and they have to triangulate it, and then they also have to code it, etc., that they've taken to sort of adopting the data analysis approach of somebody doing grounded theory. And I was just very interested to know which approach you are using, because I think there are some confusions out there, and I've had to guide 1 or 2 students, and I've had to think about it and get very confused myself. So I'm fascinated by your study. I think it's an incredible study, but I was just wondering what your approach was there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. So I will be doing analysis first and then going back to a literature review later. But that was my initial thinking. But I realized that through this process, you have to do some literature review to get anywhere. I mean, even to hand in the proposal, there needs to be extensive sort of reading of literature. So the process I've drawn up is that I've started some literature review to have some understanding of the concept and the context before I even embarked on the study. And then I'll be waiting to see sort of the theory that emerges that I can construct from the data analysis. And then I will be doing a more extensive literature review, which will then sort of feed into and also further inform the framework and further make sense of the data that's emerged. And I'll see where the theory that has been constructed, how that aligns to literature and where it differs.
Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Regan. I think we can all agree that you've certainly got a really interesting study, and for our doctoral candidates that have joined, I'm sure that they are very excited around the fact that they get to see what it is for them to prepare as well. But most importantly, I think it's very brave for students to be on here. And I think you've got a phenomenal study, and I look forward to seeing it to completion. Dr. Viljoen is always publishing with her students, so looking forward to seeing publications. But most importantly, the contribution it makes to society. I think the return on investment remains a critical aspect. So well done, Regan, on a phenomenal presentation. And people can still put questions in the chat if you wish to, no problem. And Regan, you can monitor and see if there's any questions as well.